What's in the basket?
Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and murderous twins. I'm Noah Hook, and today I'm very happy to say we're looking at Basket Case. This 1982 horror follows Dwayne Bradley, a young man seeking vengeance against the doctors who separated him from his deformed conjoined twin brother named Belial. Hiding his telepathic, monstrous sibling in a wicker basket, the two hunt down the doctors and anyone who gets in their way. I've been rocking my Basket Case shirt on the channel for a while, so I'm really happy that I can give this little gem of cinema some love. Basket Case was written and directed by Frank Henenlotter in his feature film debut. He's an exploitation filmmaker primarily making horror comedies, all of which are packed to the brim with sex, drugs, urban decay, abject poverty, and bizarre plots and characters you rarely find on the big screen. He's of course gone on to make 2 more Basket Case films, and a few of his other classics include Brain Damage, Frankenhooker, and Bad Biology. Henenlotter had met with film producer Edgar Levins while making a short film, and the two decided to collaborate on a feature film called Ooze. Unfortunately, they weren't able to scrape up the money to make Ooze, so Henenlotter went back to the drawing board, creating a film that they could make for far less money. And this is what they came up with. He literally wrote the script on scrap newspapers and napkins while he was staying in New York, where he soaked up the grimy, beautiful atmosphere. Basket Case was shot on 16mm film over a span of an entire year due to money issues, right in the heart of Manhattan. This was an incredibly low-budget production, around $35,000, so there were very few permits when it came to filming on locations. But I'll be damned if this isn't one of the most honest depictions of the city that never sleeps in the 80s. The film stars a bunch of people you'll pretty much only see in other Henenlotter flicks, including Kevin Van Hentenryck from Basket Case 2 and 3, The Absence of Light, and Catch of the Day as Dwayne Bradley, Terry Susan Smith, who didn't act in much of anything else but was in a punk band called the Tattooed Vegetables as Dwayne's love interest Sharon, Beverly Bonner from Brain Damage, Frankenhooker, and Black Friday Subliminal as sex worker Casey, Joe Clark from McCabe and Mrs. Miller as greedy neighbor O'Donovan, Robert Vogel from Rent Control as the greasy hotel manager, and Diana Brown from Henenlotter's short film Slash of the Knife as Dr. Judith Cutter. Belial was originally designed by Kevin Haney from films like Addams Family Values and The Road, although he had to miss chunks of filming due to the long-ass production. Most of the effects were handled by John Caglione Jr., who'd go on to work on films like Dick Tracy, The Dark Knight, and The Irishman. These effects range from quote-unquote full-body molds of Belial, along with various hand puppet body parts. The cinematography was handled by Bruce Torbay from films like Brain Damage and Murder a la Mode, and the score was composed by Gus Russo of, well, Brain Damage and nothing else. Henenlotter wasn't able to have much say when it came to the film's post-production, which saw the film expanded to 35mm and actually change aspect ratios to fit the big screen. Somehow the film made it into theaters, mostly as a midnight movie, but I wasn't able to find consistent numbers on how much it made. It had mixed reviews from the few critics who saw it at the time, but it has gone on to cult status and is downright loved by most horror fans today. Hell, the thing is actually preserved and restored by the Museum of Modern Art. Big thank you to my patron Olivia for requesting Basket Case for me to review. I absolutely adore this weird little film, and I'm always happy to revisit it. Realistically, it is not a great film, and only the most devout kind of horror fans can probably appreciate it, so I hope y'all are down for a wild ride. I hope y'all got time to visit the Statue of Liberty, cause we're watching Basket Case. The movie opens as a doctor named Julius Lifflander notices some suspicious movement outside his remote home. He rushes back inside to call 911, but someone or something climbs the walls to cut the phone line. He finds all the doors and windows are jammed shut, and the intruder also cuts off the power. Lifflander just starts shooting aimlessly into the dark, but when he sees who it is that's visiting him, he simply falls to the floor. A monstrous hand appears and starts ripping Lifflander to shreds, and you know he's dead thanks to this very convincing blood spray. Now we hop over to New York City, baby. In the dirty, dangerous streets, we meet Dwayne Bradley and his beautiful wicker basket. After passing by some strip clubs and drug dealers, he makes his way to Hotel Broslin, which let's just say is not the Marriott. Here we meet a few kind of important characters, including the wannabe Michael Corleone hotel manager, and a sneaky current resident named O'Donovan. Dwayne isn't very street smart and foolishly flashes a fat wad of cash in front of the group, securing himself a room. On his way up, Dwayne meets a strange woman named Josephine who genuinely adds nothing but more fun character into the film. He also meets his next door neighbor, a sex worker named Casey. She's on the clock right now, but we'll get more of her later. Dwayne drops off his basket and runs to grab some grub, but those tasty hamburgers aren't for him. They're for his bro Belial. We don't get to see the little bastard just yet, but we do watch as Dwayne rifles through some documents from Lifflander's office. Specifically, Dwayne looks over his own file, which has signatures from doctors Harold Needleman and Judith Cutter. He's able to track down Needleman in the Yellow Pages, and the brothers plan their next assassination. That night, Dwayne is woken up by Belial, who is speaking to him telepathically.
For Christ's sake, shut up and let me get some sleep!
We never hear Belial's inner voice, only Dwayne's verbal responses to him. He tells his brother they've got a big day tomorrow, begging him to pipe down so they can rest. The next day, Casey catches O'Donovan trying to sneak a peek at Dwayne's roll of money, and she takes the time to warn her neighbor.
But somebody's been snooping around your door, peeking through the keyhole and shit.
She takes a liking to the doe-eyed lad and invites him out for a drink sometime. Dwayne packs up his map, locks the basket, and the boys head out to visit Needleman. At Needleman's office, Dwayne meets the receptionist Sharon, who is having big problems with her typewriter.
Yesterday it was squeaking, like if a mouse was caught inside.
Dwayne explains that he is not a repairman, but an old friend of Needleman, and Sharon is able to squeeze him in for an appointment. Dwayne does use an alias instead of his real name, claiming Needleman will get a kick out of the surprise. Sharon is fucking flabbergasted that Dwayne hasn't visited the Statue of Liberty yet.
Haven't had the time? Well, what about Radio City Music Hall? Or the UN? Had time for them?
And she offers to show him around town sometime. This Steve Buscemi looking dude is Dr. Needleman, and once he finishes gobbling a slice of pizza, Dwayne tells him he's experiencing some chest pain. Needleman doesn't recognize Dwayne at first, but that changes when he shows off a humongous scar on the side of his body. We don't get to hear their conversation, but Dwayne tells Sharon he was very surprised. She asks Dwayne if he'd like to go out this evening, but he initially turns her down. After reconsidering, he puts Belial down across the room and he takes Sharon's contact info without his brother's knowledge. Needleman is fucking shook by his unexpected visitor, and he realizes he recently had an urgent call come in from Dr. Lifflander. That night, Dwayne and Belial watch a kung fu movie, but when Dwayne dozes off, some dude tries to steal the basket. He takes it to the bathroom and busts off the lock, but Belial don't take too kindly to wicker thieves around these parts. Once Needleman isn't able to get a hold of Lifflander, he calls up Dr. Cutter, who is currently taking advantage of her dinner date.
If I have any more, I'm liable to...
That's all right. I like you drunk. You're cute when you slobber.
She is surprised to hear from Needleman, who proceeds to tell her that Dwayne came to see him using a phony name. And apparently Dwayne also shared with him that Lifflander is dead. Cutter doesn't take this situation seriously and hangs up though, just in time for Dwayne and his stinky basket to arrive. The boys watch as Sharon heads out for the night, and Dwayne releases his brother to have a little fun. Through Belial's POV, we break down the door, and Needleman starts barricading his office. Too bad Belial's already inside. We get our first full body shots of the lumpy lad as he screams his fucking head off and gruesomely disembowels the doctor. By the time Belial is done, Needleman has been completely torn in half. Belial meets Dwayne downstairs with Needleman's address book, so now they can pay Dr. Cutter a visit as well. Okay, back in the basket you go. The next day, Dwayne rewards his brother with a tasty pack of cold hot dogs. I'm sorry, Joey Chestnut who? He also gives Belial a brand new TV, telling him he's going to spend the day casing Cutter's house. But Dwayne ain't planning murders today. No sir, he's going on a hot date with Sharon, who probably doesn't know she's out of a job yet. They hit up Lady Liberty, but both confess they'd rather spend time together than sightsee. Oh yeah, we should all be kissing with our mouths wide open. Belial can sense that his brother is having an erotic time and goes into a jealous rage, destroying the hotel room and getting the attention of every damn person there. Hell, he even becomes a stop-motion animation for a minute. Tony Soprano and O'Donovan make their way inside, but all either of them spots is Dwayne's money stash. O'Donovan feigns fatigue as the group disperses, but once the coast is clear, he picks the lock and grabs the cash. But then the poor bastard gets greedy and gets a face full of Belial. Dwayne feels a disturbance in the force as Belial smears O'Donovan with food coloring, but by the time the manager and the other tenants arrive, Belial is long gone. Dwayne returns to find the residents in a panic, and he very suspiciously screams at Sharon to leave so she doesn't get killed like O'Donovan. His antics attract the attention of a detective who Dwayne reluctantly lets inside his apartment. He claims he made this humongous mess last night, and fortunately Belial has found a new hiding spot. It's also fortunate that Dwayne has an alibi, so the cops head out with nothing but a ton of suspicion. And we never see them again, so don't worry about them. Dwayne frantically searches for his brother, who found a lovely hiding spot in the toilet. Dwayne's upset at him for nearly blowing their cover, but Belial is upset at him for lying about going on a date with Sharon. He feels like his brother is deserting him, but Dwayne says he just wants some time to himself. He reminds Belial that this whole triple homicide plan was his idea, and he promises they're going to see it through and that he will never desert him. Aw, that was actually kinda sweet. That night, Casey finds Dwayne and his basket at a bar, and it's clear he has had a few too many. That doesn't stop the both of them from having a few more, and Casey pops the question.
What's in the basket?
My brother.
He unwittingly spills the tea to Casey, explaining that they were conjoined twins whose mother died giving birth. Belial was so horribly deformed they weren't allowed to leave their aunt's house, which is where they stayed because their father hated them so much, and due to this, Belial absolutely hates being seen by anybody but Dwayne. They could speak to each other telepathically, but after they were disconnected, only Belial could communicate to Dwayne. Their father and 3 heartless doctors separated them and threw Belial away like garbage, but he survived and came back stronger. Dwayne passes out, giving us a flashback of these events. Yeah, Papa Bradley fucking hated his sons, referring to them as a twisted, murderous monster. We flash forward 12 years as a social worker is visiting their aunt. We get a good look at what life was like for Dwayne and Belial, and it wasn't too pretty. While their aunt was away on a trip, their father hired Lifflander, Needleman, and Cutter to remove the deformity from Dwayne, and he'd prefer if the other half didn't survive. Lifflander has second thoughts about the procedure, but he eventually joins as Dr. Cutter leads the charge. They drag the boys to a makeshift operating room and have to inject them with a ton of sedatives before Belial goes down. They successfully separate the brothers, and that night Dwayne wakes to find himself alone for the very first time. He quickly hears from Belial telepathically though, and he rescues his brother from his trash bag coffin. Damn, these boys must have some Wolverine genes, cause humongous surgery be damned, that very same night they lure their father down to the basement and murder him with this DIY BattleBot contraption. Ooh, split in half vertically, very nice. Damn, their auntie is a fucking G though, helping to dispose of the evidence of their crime and deciding Belial will be safest if the world continues to believe he's dead. Aw, what the fuck, this is so wholesome. Oh, auntie dead. And that brings us to today. Dwayne and Casey return to the Broslin and she helps the tipsy king into bed, although he does jolt to his senses to ensure Belial makes it inside as well. Curiosity finally gets the best of Casey and she opens up the basket, but it seems our little buddy has gone rogue. She returns to her very smiley face themed room and strips down to a t-shirt, but aw shit Casey, you got a cuddle buddy. Her screams get the attention of the entire hotel, but Belial once again successfully escapes. Ah, the little freak took her panties. The next day, a very hungover Dwayne brings his bro to Dr. Cutter's office, and it's only now we learn that she is actually a veterinarian. Dwayne is feeling bold and simply reveals his identity to Cutter, who doesn't intend on being threatened by some scrawny kid. But of course, she makes the same fatal mistake of opening that damn basket. Dwayne gets knocked down in the mayhem, and Cutter's employees overhear the screaming. She almost manages to shank Belial with a scalpel, but he gets the upper hand and forces her face into the scalpel drawer. The other vets make their way in time for Cutter to give one hell of a final scream as Dwayne and Belial see themselves out. Sharon finds Dwayne as he's returning to the Broslin, sharing with him that the police have found Needleman's body. For some reason, Dwayne is the person she felt she could go to for comfort and safety, and he brings her inside for a teary-eyed makeout sesh. But just as Dwayne is getting to second base, Belial freaks the fuck out, and Dwayne wraps Sharon in a sheet and yeets her into the hallway. For some reason, she wants to be let back inside, so Dwayne has to argue with her while he tries to shove Belial back into his basket. These neighbors will never get a moment of peace and quiet. That night, Belial takes advantage of Dwayne's exhaustion to sneak out of his basket, and it seems he even ponders killing his brother for a moment. He doesn't have it in him to do it, but he does sneak out for some Belial time. Dwayne has a nightmare that he's running down the grimy New York streets buck naked, and his journey leads him to Sharon's apartment. He makes his way inside and caresses her face, feet, and titties before crawling on top of her. But that ain't Dwayne getting his freak on. Nope, he was seeing the world through Belial's eyes. Sharon wakes in absolute terror, and the poor woman gets strangled to death by the nasty lump of flesh. Dwayne arrives to find his brother dry humping his girlfriend's corpse, and on his way home, Dwayne screams at his brother for killing an innocent person just because he was jealous. The hotel guests burst in to check on their noisiest neighbor, and Belial bursts out and grabs his brother by the dick. Damn, Belial's got some real strength. He tackles Dwayne and they both go flying through the window. Belial manages to grab a hold of the hotel sign, and the bizarre sight quickly draws a crowd. His ridiculous grip eventually knocks out Dwayne, and his other hand eventually loses grip and they plummet down multiple stories to the cold, hard concrete. The movie ends with a crowd gathering around their bodies, and at this time it was probably the death of Dwayne and Belial, but as we know, these two troublemakers managed to survive for future films. And that's Basket Case. Man oh man, this is such a special little film. There are just so many bizarre little details, way more than I could possibly list off in a video like this. But between the clearly authentic New York locals, hilarious line deliveries, grimy locations, and low budget effects, there is just so much personality here. It's wild that they got so many great shots of New York City just by doing it. No permits, no permission, just the passion of making this disturbing little picture. I think this goes without saying, but it realistically isn't a great film from a technical standpoint. This is the kind of thing that only real horror and exploitation fans can really appreciate. A lot of the dialogue is poorly dubbed, the acting is all over the place to put it nicely, and the practical effects are not very convincing. But none of those flaws detract from the film for me, they only add to the absurd charm. Belial is easily one of my all-time favorite movie monsters. Between his horrifying design, his over-the-top screams, and the earnest effects used to bring him to life, Belial is just super entertaining and unsettling. But I love that he has some genuinely wholesome and heartfelt moments with Dwayne and his aunt, forcing us to deal with the fact that he is a victim of this situation, possibly more than anyone. You don't really feel sorry for him since he's killing and sexually assaulting people, but you can understand what led to this behavior. The addition of telepathy between the brothers is clever. Even if we don't hear Belial's voice, we know there is more to him than mindless rage. Also, the decision to carry him around in a wicker basket is so stupid, but makes so much sense. Kevin Van Hentenryck gives a solid performance as Dwayne. Nobody here has given a great performance, but he's probably the best of the bunch. Beverly Bonner is an absolute treat as Casey, and I'd like to try whatever the fuck Diana Brown was on while she was playing Dr. Cutter. I also love the ragtag group of hotel residents. The fact they continuously showed up for months of shoots is so endearing to me. It's also pretty rare to get films that treat their killers and monsters as the protagonists, and I love the decision to really showcase and highlight these crazy characters. And even though the two of them dying together would have been poetic, I'm glad we get more adventures from the Bradley brothers. All in all, I absolutely love Basket Case. It has a great setting, over-the-top characters, and even more over-the-top plot, and an iconic monster. Belial and Dwayne bring such an unhinged humor as they argue, show each other love, and kill their enemies. It is films like this that make the horror genre so unique and fun. You just don't get this kind of experimentation anywhere else. Basket Case is cheap, exploitative schlock, and I can't help but love every minute of it. Thank you again to my patron Olivia for requesting it for me to review. I'm sure you can tell I had a good time with it. Well, that's about it. I would love to cover the sequel, so I may try to fit them in somewhere in between my Friday the 13th reviews. But for now, join me in 2 weeks as we check out Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Basket Case. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my horror reviews, and if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks y'all.